Hey guys, I'm Becky and welcome back to my channel. So we've been going over the basics of what it is to apply for a new job, creating the resume, writing the cover letter, and now you've got the call back and you're ready for the interview. So for me, interviews are incredibly nerve-wracking. I always get super flushed and forget what I'm gonna say, and I'm not very good at interviews. I don't do well under that type of situation. And it's weird because I've sat on both sides of the table. I've been the one being interviewed and I've been one of the panelists interviewing someone else. And no matter what, I always have the jitters, I always get nervous and have butterflies. So it doesn't matter how much experience you have or how many times you've aced an interview, it's really important to plan and prepare for each separate interview that you have. I love a quote by Benjamin Franklin. And it says, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. And I think that ties in incredibly well with interviewing for a job and applying for a job and what that whole process looks like. So as a rule of thumb, you should always be overdressed for an interview. Put on a blazer, put on a jacket, a suit and tie, all 9 yards, pull out all the stops for it. Unless they are specifically stating to dress a certain way. A great example for that, I was invited to almost like an open interview night with a local company here. They have a very casual culture, and on the invitation that was sent to me, they specifically said, come dress casual, jeans and hoodie. And so that is what I did. Awkward as I felt, I went in with jeans and a hoodie, and I was so glad that I actually listened to the directions they were giving me, because it was very clear who had actually read the invitation completely and who hadn't, because all of the staff that were there that I was interacting with, they were all casual, but there were quite a few people that showed up in full business and they really stood out. So Usually you're going to want to be dressed up for an interview, but make sure that you're taking the time to review an invitation or an email or write down notes about the phone call about what the interview is so that you know ahead of time what you're walking into, because you don't want to be the odd man out in the room. Another simple thing is to just make sure that you look nice. Your hair is brushed, your hair is combed, you don't have any stubble coming in, you don't have a unibrow, anything like that. Make sure your shoes are tied, your belt is matching your rest of the outfit, you don't have any stains or tears or rips or anything like that. Just make sure that you look presentable and professional. It definitely does play an aspect into that, even though it's not a very big thing. I've come out of interviewing someone and people have been talking, well, their shoes just did not go up with their outfit. So when in doubt, wear black shoes, wear black socks, don't wear white socks. It's very, very noticeable. Little things. So what should you bring to an interview? Well, it's a good rule of thumb to bring extra printed copies of your resume. Usually take 3 to 5 depending on how many people I know are going to be interviewing me. Most of the time they're going to have your resume already set out in front of them with a set of questions and they're not going to need it. But I've actually been in the middle of an interview where they didn't have my resume, and it took me a couple minutes to realize that they didn't have it. And then I was like, oh, would you guys like copies of my resume? And they were like, yeah. And so then I got up and I passed them all copies of my resume because I have it. So more than likely you're not going to need those copies, but in the off chance that you do, it looks very, very good if you can pull them out and give them to people. So always be prepared on that aspect. Another thing that's good to have handy is a list of references. Normally with resumes, you don't provide references anymore. That's a thing of the past. But you want to be prepared in the off chance that they do ask you for references. Most of the time they're going to do a third party after the fact or over email, but they might do it in the middle of an interview. So if you have a list of references that you know are going to fit and are willing to put in a good word on behalf, have those prepared just on the off chance that you need them. I like to track all of my references on an Excel sheet. Basically, when did I work with them? How did I work with them? What was our relationship? What's their current contact information? And when was the last time that I actually used them as a reference? So I have that running down with all the jobs that I've had. So it's really quick and easy to be able to pull that information and plug it in if they think they're going to highlight a good aspect that the career or the job is looking for. Another thing that I like to bring with me is a list of questions that I'm going to ask the people that are interviewing me. We'll touch a little bit more on that later because I think it's very, very important to have prepared questions, but I like to bring a hard copy, whether it's my handwritten or it's typed out, just because I get flustered and I know that they're prepared for the interview, they're going to have questions for me. It is not going to look bad on me if I pull them out in the middle of the interview like I do almost every time and go over the questions that I have. Because you remember, you're interviewing the company just as much as they're interviewing you. So always a good rule of thumb to have that set up and prepared on the off chance that you can't think of any questions in the middle of your interview. Another thing that I like to bring is just some notes about the company. Usually I'll put together notes when I'm crafting my resume and my cover letter, and I'll just outline, well, how many people do they have working there? How long have they been there? What's a brief history? What are their values? What is their mission statement? And I'll just have that listed down. One, it helps me remember when I write it down myself, and two, I can look at it before I walk in and know that if I ever stumble in the middle of the interview, I can look down at my notes and go, oh yeah, that's right. Safety was a value that they added in 2020 or whatever it might be. Another thing to just bring into the job interview is just something to be able to take notes on. A pen and paper, a notepad, a blank sheet, whatever it might be. You might have some questions that you think of in the middle of the interview, or you might want to take some notes about what they're saying or what they're referencing, or if you're unable to answer something and you want to make sure that you can write down what it is you didn't answer so you can come back later and answer that for them. It's a good rule of thumb to have that, and there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever, because remember, you're interviewing them and they're interviewing you. So before I walk into an interview, the night before usually, I'm going to prep my bag. I'm going to have my outfit laid out, my shoes laid out, everything that I'm going to need, my resume, my pens, my directions on how to get there, what the building is, do I have a phone number for them if I can't find the building. I'm just going to have everything prepped and laid out the night before so I don't have to worry about it when I get up and head out to that interview. It's also very important to remember to arrive a little bit early. You don't want to arrive on the clock because they're going to be sitting there waiting for you. You want to try and arrive 10 to 15 minutes early. Maybe if you're not sure exactly where it is, even a little bit earlier. I've definitely had an interview where I couldn't find the building. There was a big campus, there was multiple buildings, and I could not find it. And I was literally going from building to building going, where is this? Like, where do I find this? Until I finally was able to make it there. And of course I was on time because I built in that buffer. And it looked very good that I wasn't late for my interview, even though I didn't know exactly where I was going. That's where it's also really helpful to have the recruiter's phone number written down, their name, someone's contact information, because you could always call them up and go, hey, I'm here, but I'm really having trouble finding it. I'm at this place. Can you come meet me and walk me? Because I guarantee you, they want to take care of you. They want to make sure that you have a good experience, and they're going to try and help you out as best they can, because recruiters are really nice people. They're bubbly, they're open, they're just fun, and they're going to want to take care of you. So don't hesitate to reach out to them if you have questions about who you're interviewing with, where you're interviewing at, or just anything in general in that regard. They're a tool that you can use. So you've made it to the interview, you found the right place. Now we get to the hard part, the questions that they're going to be asking you. Most of the time they're going to start off with the simple question of, tell me about yourself. And you honestly should always have a prepared answer to this question. Some people consider it or refer to it as an elevator speech, something that you can give in about 30 seconds to someone. Just basically 2 to 3 sentences about where you are in life, how you got there, what kind of made you where you are. Really simple, really straightforward, but you should always have that prepared because that's usually the first question that is always asked in interviews. Some other questions that you might be asked are, what led you to apply for this position? What are your long-term career goals? What strengths could you bring to this position? What is your biggest weakness? That to me is a really hard question because they're wanting you to identify something that's not the best quality in you. For me, it is going to probably always be my handwriting. I have terrible handwriting, and it does impact me in some aspects. It takes me longer to write nicer, and it can have a negative impact in that regard. But I think it's really important when they do ask you this, what is a weakness that you have, that you back it up and you swing it And you go, well, I really struggle with delegating, but I have been working on prioritizing with my subordinates on, I need this happen. Okay, you can do this, and I've made improvements on my ability to delegate and how that impacts the overall flow of the team. So if you can say, yep, this is something that I struggle with, but here's how I'm working on it. Here's how I'm making it better and improving upon it. It looks amazing. So take that opportunity, have it thought out, like, what is my weakness? How can I twist it? How can I make it seem like I am improving on that? Because that's what they're looking for. Most interviews are going to follow a structure of set questions that they're asking you. Maybe there'll be 3 or 4 people on a panel that each have a different area and questions. They're going to rate you on how you answer and what you go through on that. But once you get through that, they're going to turn around and they'll open the floor up to you for questions. And you should always, always, always have questions. Like I said, going back to that list of prepared questions. I typically, when I go in, I want to know who I'm interviewing with. I'm going to look them up on LinkedIn or other social media platforms, and I'm going to try and come up with a specific question for each person that is interviewing me. I had one that they had been running a coffee business, and they had switched a dramatic career shift from a coffee business, basically running their own business, into a recruiting field. And I was, why? Like, what led you to do that? Why? How did you struggle with that? How did that impact you? What made you do that? And it shows that you actually care, that you're willing to put in some time and know the people that you're interviewing with, that you're potentially going to be working with. And 2, it gives you great talking points and connecting with them, because ultimately they're people, they're going to have emotions. Emotions are going to play a little bit into this. And if you can show that you're compassionate and you're a team player, that's going to go up on the rankings for you. So any way that you can to personalize yourself, but not like overly. Like, don't flirt, don't wink, try not to crack jokes, but try and be personable and show that you genuinely care about people and that you're interested in people. It's a good way to go. But on top of the questions for specifically, I always have a list of questions ready to go about the company. Maybe there have been some changes that have gone on. Maybe they're expanding and reaching out to a different area or acquiring a different company. I want to know about that. I want to ask about that. I definitely have made people laugh in the middle of an interview when I talk. Like, I like lists. I like having a checklist and knowing what I'm going to do, and when I get it done, there's great satisfaction in slicing that off. So I have no shame whatsoever in pulling out my own questions in the middle of an interview, because I know that I want to make sure that I want to work for this company, that their values are aligning with mine, their culture is something that I want to be a part of, and they're interviewing me for the same aspect, to make sure that I can fulfill the job and I'm going to fit into the culture that they need. So I have no shame whatsoever in pulling out my list of questions and turning the tables right back on them, because that's what they're looking for. Here are some questions that I have asked in the past. One of my big focuses is the team aspect. I love the culture of a team and the atmosphere of a team, so I want to make sure that I'm asking, what is the culture like? What is the team dynamic like? I want to ask, how do they see the company evolving in the next 5 years? Maybe there's going to be some big changes that are in the works that anybody outside of the company wouldn't know about, but they might. Or I like to ask, what's the most challenging part of the position? What's the frustrating part? What is the part that you get stuck on over and over again? The thing that has really helped when I'm asking questions is this a new position? If it's not a new position, why did the person leave me? Like, why did the person before me leave? Was there a better opportunity? Was there something that happened on the team? What's kind of leading to this shift and this change? And then I always end it with, have I answered all your questions? Is there anything else that you would like to ask me? So I turn the tables back on them and say, hey, I think I've got all my questions answered. Do you have anything else for me? And make sure that they have that opportunity to ask any other questions. There's some areas in recruiting and the work culture in and of itself that you shouldn't hit. So there's certain subjects and areas that shouldn't be touched on, that shouldn't be brought up, that shouldn't matter when it comes to identifying if you are qualified to fulfill a position. So a lot of those, most of the time, these are not going to come up in your interview. Like, they shouldn't come up in the interview. There's laws protecting, there's different classes that, like, it's protected. You should not be asked these things. You shouldn't be asked what your race is, what your ethnicity is, what religion you practice, how old you are, how long do you plan on working before you actually retire? Do you have children? Are you planning on having children? Do you see yourself having children in the next 2 years? Do you smoke? Do you drink? Do you do drugs? Do you have any disabilities? Have you ever had attendance issues? Are you the National Guard or the Reserves? Were you honorably discharged from the military? Those are questions that should not be asked. If they are, they're leading to potential discrimination on the employer's part, because these are showing areas that are vulnerabilities for people and that are easily discriminated against historically. So you can simply say, like, you know, I really don't feel comfortable talking about my personal life. I'm more than happy to touch on any of my professional experience that you would like. And just kind of sidestep and go, you know, it's not really something I want to talk about. How about we talk about my work experience? And kind of shift that table. If they don't respond very nicely on it, you probably don't want to work for them anyways. If they're asking things that they know they legally should not be asking, they're probably doing other things behind closed doors that aren't legal either. I was so excited for this job. I thought it was like my dream job, and I got in there and I got the interview. And I remember the hiring manager was asking me, do you have kids? Do you have a family? You know, played along with a little bit, like, oh, you know, no. And then they asked me, do you have thick skin? We have a unique dynamic here. Do you have thick skin? Are you going to be able to put up with that? And that wasn't the biggest red flag to me, because based on the company culture, I kind of expected something in that regard. But what really threw me was when I asked, oh, why did the person before me leave? And that hiring manager started bad-mouthing this person. And I know this person. It's a small community, it's a small network group, and so I knew the person. And the hiring manager was just bad-mouthing them in front of me, talking down on them, and it just left this very bad feeling in my mouth and in my stomach, and I was like, no. Like, this manager is showing me signs that they don't understand what their position is supposed to do, and the legalities regarding it. And they're showing me that they don't really care about their employee, because here they are not even a couple weeks after the fact, and they're bad-mouthing their employee to a complete stranger. And I was kind of blown away. There was other things in the interview. So needless to say, when they offered me the position, I turned them down. I didn't want to work underneath that manager. I just didn't feel like it was a good fit, and that they were going to have the best interest for me and the organization at heart. And so I backed out and took a different position. I think it's really important to understand that that gut feeling is okay. Like, if you're having that gut feeling, that gut reaction of going, you know, I'm not sure that this is the right fit for me, I'm not having the best vibes with them, trust your gut. It's probably right. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be right. If you're having those feelings in the middle of an interview based off of what they're telling you, what they're trying to show you is their company, don't work for them. Do you really have to have the job? If you do, take it, use it as a stepping stone, take the job that you really want. Don't be afraid to use that. But if you have other options and you're not trusting the company, don't work for them. They're probably doing a lot worse things behind the scenes that you don't even know about yet. You're going to get tangled in a web that maybe doesn't align with your values. So trust your feelings. One thing that's really cool is the idea that you can reach out to other people that work at the organization. I did that with I had a hiring manager that was pursuing me for a position, and I wasn't sure exactly if I wanted it or not, and one of my mentors actually encouraged me to reach out to the former colleague. And so I messaged her on LinkedIn and said, hey, like, you know, I'm looking at this position, would you mind telling me a little bit about it? What was your pros and your cons? Why did you leave? And luckily she was nice enough to give me this whole long spiel about how she kind of developed the position and what it really entailed, and like the timelines and frequencies and job average day what the average day looked like in the job, and why she left. And it really played an impact on me deciding not to fulfill that position. It really weighed down on me if I wanted it or not, and I'm really glad that I did reach out to her, because I don't think it would have been a good fit. So that's always an option. You can find somebody maybe in your network that you know. I've had someone that I did a training with. They taught a class on using LinkedIn for connectivity and resources and networking. And they had someone that they knew was moving to my area. And so she messaged me and said, hey, would you be willing to have a conversation with this person? They're moving to the area. They're trying to understand the industry that you work in. And I was like, sure, love to talk to them. And I ended up having an hour-long phone conversation with this gal about what the area was like, what it had to offer, what the company was like that I was working for, and like the industry aspect on it. So networking and using those connections are really important, and they can really benefit you and others. So don't be afraid to use that tool that you got in your tool belt. So I think the last and almost really important thing is just sending a simple thank you card or thank you email to them. I know that it seems like a very small gesture, but it can go a long ways. It's almost like a formal thing now to send out a thank you card. You can use it as an opportunity to highlight something that stood out to you from the interview. Like, I really liked the way that you described this, or it helped me understand this thing. Or you can take it as an opportunity to maybe embellish a little bit of something that happened in the interview. Like, I didn't really do the best job describing how I portrayed this. So take a couple minutes and just write about maybe that skill set, maybe that experience, how it shaped you, and take that opportunity to not only thank them for the time, but remind them that you're an interested candidate, you want to work there, and you remember they made an impression on you, and you're hoping that you make an impression on them. So take all those tools, put them in your bag, set up your resume, set up your cover letter, get ready for the interview, prep it all, dress nice, and you're going to knock it out of the park. And good luck. I'll see you next time.